The Wolves midfielder Matheus Nunez is on strike in an attempt to force through a move to the champions, Manchester City. Tottenham are in talks with Nottingham Forest over their winger Brennan Johnson. And as it stands, Harry Maguire will stay at Manchester United despite renewed interest from West Ham. Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. The pressure to get deals done is mounting before Friday's deadline. And there is loads going on tonight. Darmest chef Mark McAdam and the former Newcastle and Crystal Palace winger Darren Ambrose are here to take us through it all. Also on the way, Harry Kane has already made the move to the Bundesliga. News on two more Premier League players who could join him at Bayern on the way. And with deadline day approaching, we discuss who else needs to do business before Friday's 11 o'clock deadline to ensure they're set for the season. Yes, like I said, so much to get through. So let's start, Mark, with the goings-on at Wolves. A player on strike. What's going on?
Yeah, very unusual situation. You don't see it all that often, but this is really the last chance saloon for Matheus Nunes to try and force this move to Manchester City through. Very often you see players agitating for a move. This is the highest level of agitation because it's now 2 days in a row that he's not turned up to the Wolves training complex where he has been expected to be as far as the manager Gary O'Neill is concerned. We know that there has been long-standing interest in the player from Manchester City. This is a story that was initially broke by David Ornstein earlier on today. It's been confirmed by our sources as well. And Wolves will discipline the player for not turning up to training. So this is significant. To just take you back in time ever so slightly, there was interest from Manchester City last Thursday where a bid was rejected of £47 million. You have to remember that Nunez was a Wolves record transfer for the football club, this time last summer for £42 million. So it's not a great deal more than what they paid for him, so you can understand why it was rejected. He has 4 years left on his current deal, plus an option for a further year in terms of making that a 5-year deal. Our understanding is that Wolves would only sell him for a minimum of £60 million. But of course, really, as far as they're concerned, he's not for sale. But we are expecting Manchester City to come back to the table, now that his head's been turned, now that he's not turned up to training, to try and potentially get a deal agreed. But this is really significant developments tonight.
Darren, what do you make of a player going on strike?
I mean, I don't think it's the greatest thing to do, in all honesty. We've spoken about Manchester City comes calling, like, you want to get there. As a player, you want to get there. But at the moment, they've not agreed a deal. They've not agreed the fee. So to not turn up to training, I've been in around situations at football clubs when, you know, players can be disruptive in training, but to not turn up, I've never been involved in that situation. The issue arises if Man City doesn't meet the fee, how you can get him back involved in the squad, integrate him, and how the supporters can get back on side. This is a football club that paid an awful lot of money for him last year. They're paying him a lot of money, by all accounts. But if you're Gary O'Neill, new football club, you're the new manager of Wolves, do you want this hanging over you? I don't think you do. I think
do you want a player that doesn't want to play for you?
Of course not. Of course not. If they don't meet the fee, Manchester City, the valuation, and he does stay, of course, he's a fantastic footballer. That's why Manchester City wants him. That's why Pep Guardiola wants him. So you'd want to be able to get him back involved in the squad. But I think from now till Friday, we're probably going to see some movement on this. And if it's me, the valuation is, 60? They're offering, 47 around? You've got to meet somewhere so Gary O'Neill can just forget this and concentrate on the players that he already has at the football club.
Yes. Go on, Mark.
No, I was just going to say the bigger picture as well for Wolves is that they've lost so many players this season, this summer. They're right up against it with regards to FFP as well. There is an understanding from sources close to the football club that have told us that they are not under pressure any longer to sell players and generate money to try and balance the FFP commitments. So therefore, this would probably be seen as a piece of business that's unwanted because it's such a key player and they've already done the bulk of their selling already. So it comes at the wrong time because not only are they potentially going to sell the player, They've got to try and replace him, and that's the most difficult thing with the window closing.
You're in a difficult situation if you are Gary O'Neill, because you're probably battling with the powers that be at the football club, potentially saying, look, we don't want a player that doesn't want to be here, but they're saying, well, there's a valuation that needs to be met. If it doesn't, but then you're thinking as a manager, well, if you're my player, I want you to stay at the football club. I want you to be part of it. You're talented. Wolves is a big season for Wolves. So you're thinking, well, if you're going to go on strike, then maybe this is the worst thing that you could be doing, and I'll just keep you around the football club and won't accept a fee no matter how much.
Dharmesh, you've seen a lot of transfer windows. A lot of players agitate. Generally, when they behave like this, do they get the move they want?
Case by case, but if a player agitates, and Darren will be able to throw more light on this, have you experienced a situation when you've been playing when maybe yourself or somebody else has agitated that much for a move that they've said, right, I'm not training anymore?
Never not training. I myself, and I'm not proud of this, I was a bit disruptive at Crystal Palace. I think.
What does that mean? What did you do?
I was in pre-season, and I was one of the fitter players in terms of running, and I was losing to the manager in the races, so I wasn't giving it 100%. More so, I wanted to stay at the football club first and foremost, and there wasn't a contract on the table. QPR, there was a contract on the table, so this situation arose, and you know, I felt for my family and for my future that I need to get this contract. Crystal Palace were in a bad way financially, so I was a little bit disruptive I just wasn't giving it 100%, and like I said, not proud of that. I didn't end up getting a move. I ended up getting a new contract at Crystal Palace. George Burley came in. That was difficult for me because George Burley gave me my chance in football at Ipswich. So it was not solely because of me, but it was clever from the football club because then I wasn't disrupted anymore, so I ended up signing a contract. But I've been around players where, you know, certain things have been said in the papers. I was at a football club once. Certain things have been said in the papers. The manager got hold of them, came onto a bus who was about to go to a away game, threw the papers at the player and said, "Get off my bus." And eventually, this player did get his move. So Dharmesh is right. It's case by case in terms of whether this gets done. When I was a player, most of the time it did happen, just not when I was disruptive.
You weren't disruptive enough.
Exactly.
So that said then, do you think Matheus Nunez will be a Wolves or Manchester City player on September the 2nd?
I think this is in the power of Manchester City, I believe, because they know he's been disrupted. We've seen this before. They've disrupted players and then just walked away from the deal. So I think they need to come up with a fee and a solution with Wolves. I don't think the player going on a strike will have any relevance whatsoever because the player is getting paid by Wolves Football Club. I'm sure there'll be some financial disciplinary as well if he doesn't turn up any longer. But Manchester City, I think, will come up with a fee. He's a perfect fit for Manchester City, let's be honest. He's a talented football player. Kevin De Bruyne being out till the new year, I think he'll end up at Manchester City.
I wonder if Wolves have set a private deadline as well. There's only 4 days of this window to go. If they lose one of their key players, they don't want it happening at 10 o'clock on September the 1st because they're going to have no time to bring in a replacement. So,
but is he still a key player if he doesn't get the move? Because we could see a situation where, OK, he's on strike now. You want to integrate him back into the football team, but he's, 24, 25, so he's still young. He could sulk for a long, long time if this doesn't get done.
He could. I'm saying that this season has shown that he is a key player. I know he got sent off in the second game. He didn't play in their first win of the season over the weekend, but he was fantastic against Manchester United. He started both of their opening 2 games. So Gary O'Neill is obviously counting on him, sees him as a key player. From the outside, you could say that. So if they are to sell him, I think they would want this done very, very soon now, rather than it dragging out onto deadline day and then thinking, well, we've got this money, but this money's no good to us just now because we can't bring in anyone to replace Matheus Nunes.
I agree. What Gary O'Neill will be doing now is he'll be looking at potential replacements, whether that's 1, 2 or 3 players, just in case. And he'll leave the fee and everything to do with Nunez. He'll leave to both football clubs and the powers that be at Wolves, and he'll be looking at replacements. So I agree with Dharmesh. It needs to be done relatively soon, so then he can go straight out and get who he wants.
OK, right. Let's talk Man United then. Harry Maguire not agitating, not being disruptive, but do we think he will move before the deadline?
It's given the time that's left, it's looking unlikely just now. West Ham United are looking into the possibility of trying to sign Harry Maguire, this time on a loan deal for the rest of the season. At the moment, there are no formal talks taking place between West Ham United and Manchester United. And as it stands, Maguire will stay at the club. And if you look at United's situation just now, they've got quite a few injuries in defence. And over the weekend, Raphael Varane came off at half-time, was replaced by Victor Lindelof. So they're going to wait to see what kind of issue that Varane has got. And I wonder if that will have an impact on what happens with Harry Maguire. You remember earlier on in the transfer window, West Ham actually agreed a deal with Manchester United for a permanent move for £30 million for Harry Maguire. But Maguire then said, no, actually, I want to stay at United. I want to fight for my place. Now, earlier on in the window, it was quite okay for United to be able to do a deal like that, simply because they probably had, irons in the fire to maybe replace Harry Maguire. And we know they were going for Benjamin Pavard from Bayern Munich. Since Maguire has decided to stay at the club, Pavard, who's only got a year left on his contract at Bayern Munich, is close now to agreeing a deal with Inter Milan. So if United were to let him go, I just wonder if they've got anything in place, in situ, to be able to replace Harry Maguire with. Sure. Or will Harry Maguire decide, right, I'm staying, see how it goes until the next transfer window, and if I am getting more regular first-team football, then I've made the right decision. If I'm not, then he might have to think about it again in January, because come the end of the season, there's a Euros, which Harry Maguire will need to be playing regular first-team football to be part of.
Isn't that the point here? Does he hang around and hope other players get injured, or does he go and play some football to make sure that he can get into Gareth Southgate's England squad?
I think he's comfortable. I think he's confident that he will still be part of the England squad. I don't know if there's been talks between Gareth Southgate and Harry Maguire. No one knows that except them themselves. So I think people won't want to hear this. I think it's financially motivated, to be honest. I think West Ham...
by Harry?
Yeah, I think West Ham are obviously not going to pay him as much as he's on, and I believe they've tried to agree a payoff Manchester United to Harry Maguire, which isn't enough for him.
But that's fair enough.
I don't begrudge any player. Exactly. He signed the contract that Manchester United offered him, and he wants to be paid the full amount. I understand that. So you're in a situation where he stays and takes his money because he feels he's comfortable and he can get into the England squad no matter what. Or, unfortunately, you have to accept a pay cut. We've seen that with certain players, if you believe you're not going to make the Euros. But by staying at Manchester United and hoping there's an injury, I think he feels he's comfortable and he will make that England squad.
He's got two opportunities here, because there's still the remainder of this transfer window and another transfer window for him maybe to make a decision still. And if another club was to come in for him for the remainder of this window and, of course, in January. But what isn't going in his favour potentially with regard to the Euros is this time last year there wasn't a major championship. I mean, during the summer there wasn't a major championship, and he was probably getting just about enough football at United last season to be able to stay in Gareth Southgate's squad. Now, I'm not saying what Gareth Southgate is going to do, but what we do know is that there are more English central defenders who are getting more game time for their respective clubs at the start of this season. And if that continues and Harry Maguire isn't getting the game time, then Gareth Southgate's going to have a decision to make.
I think this could be done. I think this is a deal that could be done, whether it's
in this window.
Ham. Yeah, I do. I think they'll come up with a solution. Look, Manchester United don't want to pay the full amount. That's understandable. And West Ham say, well, we're going to pay as much as we want, 25 million, whatever it may be. So Harry Maguire is sitting there comfortable, but you are right. You have Gueye, you have Levi Colwill, all playing that similar role to Harry Maguire. So the emergence of those talents as well could force and push Harry Maguire to maybe accept a little bit less. Yeah,
from the West Ham side as well, they were going for Harry Maguire when there was a vacancy in central defence, if you like. You had Ogbonna, you've got Aged, and you've got Zuma, and he was going to become fighting it out with those other three defenders. Since he has remained at United, West Ham have gone back into the market and brought in a central defender from Stuttgart in Konstantinos Mavropanos. But it's just very interesting to think that since they brought in Mavropanos, the story has re-emerged again. And I just wonder what's going on at West Ham. Are they looking to release one of those central defenders, or do they want a stock of 5 central defenders in that squad, whereby they can fight on what's going to be 4 fronts this season, because they've got Europa League football there as well?
Is it only West Ham?
At the moment, but that's the information we're getting at the moment.
Which has got to be a surprise.
It is a surprise.
This is an England international footballer.
25 million or whatever it may be at that figure. I think it is a surprise because he's a talented player. Look, he's not had a great couple of years at Manchester United. We know that. Confidence plays a big issue.
And also, we've all got to ignore social media, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly, yes. And if he was to go on social media, he wouldn't even be a player anymore, let's be honest, because he does get a bit of stick. But I think he's a talented football player. I'd have him at Tottenham, absolutely. I'm a Spurs fan, I'd have him at Tottenham. I think he needs to resurrect his career somewhere. And look, West Ham, Spurs, that is taking a little drop down from a huge club, Manchester United. I just think the timing, the fee that was put on him, he wasn't quite ready for that coming from Leicester. But there's a talented player in there, and I think he needs to go somewhere, play games and build his career back up. OK, let's move on to Scott McTominay, Dharmesh. What's the latest with him?
This is interesting, actually, because it's all surrounding whether Manchester United can go back into the market for a midfielder. As it stands, we've been told not to expect any major outfield incomings for the rest of this transfer window for United. Having said that, potential midfield options are still being considered if the right player at the right price or the right deal and that opportunity came along. Now, we know Fiorentina's Sofyan Amrabat is a player that Manchester United like. We know he's a player that Erik ten Hag likes. He's played under Erik ten Hag before at Utrecht. But the feeling we're getting is that a lot of the noise with Sofyan Amrabat is coming from the Italian side and maybe the players' camp. That's not to say it can't happen, but that's at this stage where the noise seems to be coming from. Fiorentina have decided his head's not right just now. He's obviously wanting to go to another club. He's waiting for Manchester United to make that call, and he's training away from the first team squad. Another player that United are looking at is Bayern Munich's Ryan Gravenberch. And there are reports emanating in Germany suggesting that there was a potential swap involving Scott McTominay. That was being explored. However, McTominay, he's come off the bench on Saturday. And as it stands, he will remain at the club. And we remember, of course, that West Ham United came in for Scott McTominay as well as Harry Maguire earlier on in this transfer window. They offered £30 million for McTominay. That was rejected out of hand. They didn't go back in. It is one to watch, but as it stands for now, we're not expecting major midfield incomings and no major midfield outgoings. But if either of those were to change, then United would have to act.
What do you think, Mark? Do you think United need help in midfield? Reinforcements?
I certainly think so. Our information at the beginning of the transfer window was that Erik ten Hag would have loved to have signed a player of Declan Rice's calibre. But for whatever reason, now whether that's he didn't have the funds, whether the takeover happening in the background was an issue in terms of the transfer activity. But it's clear that they haven't been able to strengthen in the positions that they'd like to with the players that they'd like to. You've seen Fred depart as well. There's a lot of speculation, as Dharmesh has said, about McTominay. And the way that Manchester United have started this season, it feels like a very different club to the one that finished the campaign last year. And I think the only way to really turn things around and resurrect that belief that Erik ten Hag had is to get new players in and get a real impetus in that squad and a belief, once again, that they can go and push on from last season, because right now it certainly doesn't look like they'll do that.
Indeed, and they need cover at left-back, Dharmesh.
Yeah.
A couple of high-profile players out and a couple of high-profile players being linked, so tell us.
Yeah, I mean, a number of players being linked. United are continuing to assess the left-back area because, as you mentioned, there are a couple of high-profile injuries there just now in Luke Shaw and in his deputy, Tyrell Malacia. Among the players that they've looked at, Tottenham, Sergio Reguilon, and we know that Tottenham would be open to allowing Reguilon to leave, and Chelsea's Marc Cucurella as well, bought for, I think, £60 million from Brighton not too long ago, not figuring much in Mauricio Pochettino's plans just now. And we think that United are exploring a loan for that position simply because at some point this season, Luke Shaw and Tyrell Malacia, of course, will be fit and they'll come back. I just wonder whether Cucurella might be the one option that is probably higher on United's list just now, because if they are going to go for a loan, he has the ability to play in other positions along the back four as well. So maybe that might come into consideration.
What about Cucurella? World beater at Brighton, looked like the best thing since sliced bread. Not worked out at Chelsea. Why?
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's not a right fit for the football club, for the player, and it seems to be the case. He was fantastic.
He was. Well, City were chasing him, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. It was a lot of money that he went for to Chelsea, but it's not happened at all. He's not had an appearance this season, and I think if you're thinking, if you're him, you're thinking, I want to get out and go and play some football. And whether that's a loan deal, knowing that when Luke Shaw Malacia come back, you're not going to be in the team, a loan till January maybe, you need to go and prove that you're still a good football player. At the moment, it's not happening at Chelsea whatsoever. I just don't think it was a right fit.
This is one of the problems we were talking about in the transfer show at 5 o'clock. When you hand out these big, lengthy 7, 8, 9-year contracts,
oh yeah,
and then you get a player that just doesn't fit or doesn't play the way you'd expect him to play based on the money you invested in him, this is where you've got a problem. And this is where Chelsea could have a lot of big problems in the years to come.
Yeah, isn't that the point? They could have a lot of dead wood sitting there on a lot of money for a lot of years.
Yeah, it's a strange situation. We know why they're doing it for FFP. They can spread it out over the number of years, so we know why they're doing it. But 8, 9-year contracts, what they're giving. They gave Caicedo 8-year plus 1 year option. I mean, the most pointless year option ever. And it's one of those that players can get comfortable. And subconsciously, it seems like a few of them have done that. Chelsea have got a fantastic squad of individuals. At the moment, it's not clicking as a team, but it will. But for the next 9 years or 8 years of these players, I'm not quite sure.
Oh, I'd do one of those contracts. Going back to United then, overall, what do you make of their work this summer?
Yes, really good, actually. I think they needed a number 9. There was talks of Harry Kane, wasn't there? That was never going to happen with Daniel Levy and Manchester United. We know that. Rasmus Højlund, we've not seen him yet. I think he's the key at the moment. A lot of pressure on him coming back, of course. Mason Mount, who I like a lot. It's not quite working at the moment in midfield, but they're still picking up results. And
why isn't it working?
It's just, I don't know. They're obviously not used to playing with each other. They've got some talent, of course. Casemiro, Fernandes, Mason Mount. That will work, but at the moment they're not quite used to each other. Christian Eriksen as well. They needed a goalkeeper, David De Gea going, Onana. I mean, it's been a strange start. The game the other day, Nottingham Forest, when he dived before the player had kicked it, but he's brilliant with his feet. We know that. We've seen that before. He will be a fantastic goalie. I do think they need more if they're going to compete at the very top, because they won't at the moment just with that. But I'm looking forward to seeing Rasmus Højlund come into the team and see what he brings.
But how much pressure is he under? I mean, he's like the saviour, supposedly. And he's got a lack of experience and he's more potential than finished article.
I mean, 75 million for potential, that's not too bad. And I think it's a lot of pressure on a young man's shoulders, of course. But he's the key for me, because then you put Rashford to his favoured position. He's not a number 9, Rashford. He's more effective on the left. And if he can just link the play between midfielders and himself, I don't think he's going to score 30, 40 goals in the league, nowhere near that. But if he can link the play, I think he's the key. He just needs to deal with that pressure, because there is a lot on him.
There certainly is. All right, we're going to ease the pressure on us. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll have the latest on Brennan Johnson. A lot of clubs after him. Romelu Lukaku, not quite so many, but is he actually on the way out of Chelsea? We'll talk about it next. We'll see you in a moment. Hello again, right back into it. We've got breaking news. Dharmesh Sheth.
Yeah, Luton Town, they signed Ross Barkley, didn't they, from Chelsea, which was quite a high-profile signing. They could be on the way to another one because Isaac Hayden, the Newcastle United midfielder, is having a medical at Luton ahead of what we understand to be a loan deal for the rest of the season. So Isaac Hayden having a medical at Luton.
Darren, what do you think about that?
I mean, he has to get out of Newcastle, let's be honest. He's way down the pecking order, and I don't think he'll play. So to go to another Premier League club, I mean, it's going to be difficult for Luton. We know that for all the promoted teams last season. None of them got a point yet. So it's going to be difficult. But Luton, you know, they're having a go. They're trying to get some quality midfield, quality of Premier League players in Barkley and now Isaac Hayden. So hopefully it goes well for him.
Tottenham going well, Mark, and expecting more in this week, are we?
Possibly. I think Ange Postecoglou would love to add to the Spurs ranks, particularly off the back of the start to the campaign. They've been very exciting, haven't they? This new Ange ball certainly pleasing the fans at the moment. But can they please them in the transfer market as well? That's the big question with 4 days in the window to go. And this is one I think we should all be keeping an eye on because Brennan Johnson is a very exciting youngster, 22 years old. We saw the impact he had in the Premier League last season under Steve Cooper at Nottingham Forest, where he got 8 Premier League goals. But could he be doing it at a higher level? We know that there's been interest from Brentford earlier on this summer. They had a £30 million offer rejected by Nottingham Forest. Since then, there's been no further offers, although there has been a number of clubs that have expressed an interest in Brennan Johnson's situation. Our information is that they are yet to receive a formal offer from Tottenham, who potentially see Brennan Johnson as a player that would suit the type of profile that they're looking to add with regards to additions between now and Friday. It's our information as well that Nottingham Forest would not entertain any offers that were less than £50 million. They value him that highly. So this is just a case of let's just see how things develop. He ticks all the boxes. He can play in multiple positions, either on the left or the right. He has played as a 10 before as well, but he just brings a real attacking impetus to any side that he'd play in. He's got pace. He's a Welsh international as well, so he brings that pedigree. And as I say, it could be one to keep an eye on. He's still got a long term left on his current Nottingham Forest contract, 3 years with an option of a further year. He signed a new deal this time last year. So this is one to keep an eye on, but Spurs very interested in the player.
Mark says he ticks all the boxes, does he?
Absolutely. I really like Brennan Johnson as a player. I think he's fantastic. He's only 22, as you said. I actually played with his dad, David, at Ipswich. So
Never admit stuff like that.
I know, so that makes me feel extremely old. And I mean, he'll hate me for saying it, but I think Brennan's a better player than his dad was. And his dad was a fantastic player, but pace. He must be one of the quickest players in the Premier League. And he's not a like-for-like replacement for Harry Kane. We know that. He's more of a wide player, but I think you can integrate him into that number 9 role. I certainly do. And if Richarlison, although he's working extremely hard for the team, if he doesn't start scoring, Spurs need a forward. And it's blasé to say that 50 million is not a lot of money, but in the crazy world of football at the moment, it's not that much seeing what's happening. And I think this would be a fantastic signing for Spurs.
It'd be interesting to see if Spurs do test Forest, because he's without question one of their better players. I remember watching Brennan Johnson play for Michael Appleton on loan at Lincoln City in League One, and he was outstanding. He's one of those players that you watch, he catches your eye, and straight away you put him in your notebook and you say, I'm going to keep an eye on that boy because I think he's got a lot of potential and he'll go far. And boy, has he delivered, you know.
I want to talk Tottenham with you, which I know you always like. Is it fair to say that despite Richarlison's problems, they're doing absolutely fine without Harry Kane?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Are you surprised by that?
A little. There was a real. We spoke about this before. There was a real fear factor with Spurs supporters, the club, of letting Harry Kane go. But I don't think he was holding Spurs back as such. But he was always going to play. But now, like Richarlison, not always going to play. Even Son, and this is what I love about Ange Postecoglou. Son on the first game was a bit off it, and he's like, off you come. Like, even though you're a captain, come and sit with me. We'll put someone else. We'll try something else. And I love what's happening with Spurs at the moment. Whether they're going to be top 4 contenders, top 6, just to see them play Ange ball as it's being spoken about, and to see the interviews even at the end, it's refreshing. And you know, I think having a manager at your football club that is getting on with everyone, and the media, the supporters seem to really be buying into what's happening. I know
Robbie Williams singing about
exactly
it today.
Robbie Williams. Yes, I know results help, of course, and a few results defeats could change everything. But my expectations have changed with Spurs this season.
Go on. What do you think now?
I think they'll be top 6 for sure, and I think they're outsiders for top 4. If I'm honest, I think there's no European football. I think you'll probably see a lot of changes against Fulham in the Cup. I think maybe 11 changes. I don't think he'll be concentrating too much on that. I think his sole focus will be getting as high up the league as possible, and hopefully we're top 4 contenders.
If they do make top 4, who are the other 3 and who misses out?
Well, Man City, of course, number 1. Liverpool, I think they'll be there, and Arsenal.
So they'll pip United and Newcastle.
Yeah, that's my predictions as we speak. 3 games in. That in the next 4 days, my predictions could change depending on what happens with transfers. But just seeing what's happening, we see with Arsenal when they didn't have European football how strong they were in the league. I think Spurs could do that. They're 1 or 2 injuries away from a disaster, let's be honest. So they definitely need more in the next 4 days. And like we spoke about Brennan Johnson, I think that'd be a fantastic signing.
Before Harry Kane went, we intimated on this show that actually Harry Kane wasn't really an Ange Postecoglou player.
Yeah.
If Harry had stayed, would they have been doing so well?
Yes, I think they would. Yeah, I think James Maddison. James Maddison is the bargain of the summer, of course, for me. James Maddison, James Ward-Prowse. That's 2 players I've picked out that are absolute signings of the summer at the moment. And just to see even the bit of banter he had with the Bournemouth fans the other day with the corner and moving it out, it's refreshing. And, he looks great in a Spurs kit as well. And, I mean, just to see him play, to have a player like James Maddison, we've been crying out for that since Christian Eriksen left. And he was in his pomp at the time. And Maddison, there was talk he was going to be injured. He's not. He was back. That was mind games from Ange. Loving what's happening at Spurs at the moment. I don't want to be this Spurs supporter that is going way over the top. But I am.
You're going to.
But I am.
Enough of the Spurs loving. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we've got news from Chelsea and Arsenal. We'll see you in just a moment.
Thanks very much. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. It's time now to go around the clubs.
Certainly is, Mark. Arsenal striker Balogun is close to joining Monaco for around £38 million.
Aston Villa are interested in signing Arsenal defender Nuno Tavares. He's available on a permanent deal or a loan with a buy clause.
Bournemouth still want to sign a winger and a striker before Friday's deadline.
Brentford are in talks with Nottingham Forest for winger Brennan Johnson. They had a £34 million bid for another winger, Nicolas Gonzalez, rejected by Fiorentina last week.
Midfielder Carlos Baleba is to have a medical ahead of a £25 million move from Lille to Brighton.
Burnley are one of a number of clubs interested in signing Manchester United's young left-back Alvaro Fernandez.
Roma now close to agreeing a deal to sign the Chelsea striker Romelu Lukaku on loan.
Dean Henderson has been having a medical over the weekend after a deal was agreed to sign him from Manchester United. It means Vincent Gaeta may finally get his move away from Selhurst Park this week.
Udinese striker Beto has had his Everton medical ahead of a £25.8 million move. A deal for Southampton's Che Adams now looks unlikely, but Kamaldeen Sulemana remains a winger target.
It looks set to be a busy 4 days at Fulham. Marco Silva wants as many as 5 new faces. They are close to a deal for Timothy Castagna from Leicester to cover both fullback positions.
Liverpool insist that Mohamed Salah is not for sale amid interest from Saudi Pro League side Al Ittihad. Jurgen Klopp is still keen to add to his midfield options.
Luton wants another centre-back, and Tottenham defender Japhet Tanganga is an option that Luton are looking at.
Manchester City expected to make an improved offer for Wolves midfielder Matheus Nunes. City are waiting for a formal offer from Barcelona for Joao Cancelo.
Manchester United are looking at emergency left-back covers after Luke Shaw's injury, with Tyrell Malacia also out. Sergio Reguilon, Marc Cucurella are 2 options they're looking at. United also want to sign a new central midfielder.
Newcastle's incoming business looks done, but a move for a long-term target, if they became available, hasn't been ruled out.
Nottingham Forest are still in the market for a left-back, centre-back and central midfielder, another goalkeeper and probably a forward if they lose Brennan Johnson. Nuno Tavares has been one of their main left-back targets. Forest have also approached Leicester City over a potential deal for midfielder Wilfred Ndidi.
Sheffield United manager Paul Heckingbottom wants to bring in players before Friday's deadline, but is likely to focus on the loan market.
Now Tottenham are in talks with Brentford and Nottingham Forest over winger Brennan Johnson.
West Ham United technical director Tim Steighton in negotiations with Corinthians over the signing of forward Yuri Alberto.
And finally, Matheus Nunes has gone on strike as he looks to force through a move to Manchester City. Wolves value the player at closer to £60 million and will not budge unless the valuation is met.
So that was today's Premier League wrap. I've got to tell you that Darren Amber is very disappointed that it wasn't rhyming. Darmesh, you mentioned Romelu Lukaku in that there. So has he got a way out of Chelsea at last?
Close. Talks between Roma and Chelsea over the signing of Romelu Lukaku continued over the weekend. They carried on today. We understand it's on the verge of happening now, this straight loan move from Chelsea to Roma. It was all over the loan fee was the discussion, and also the wages for Romelu Lukaku. He's on huge wages at Chelsea. How much of a portion of that wage that Chelsea were going to pay, off Roma were going to pay all of it, or indeed would Lukaku take a wage cut to make the move to Roma happen? All of that seems to be very, very close to an agreement now, and there's a willingness from all parties to get it done. This has been rumbling on for the entire transfer window. He was going to go to Inter Milan. Inter Milan were desperate to sign him. Romelu Lukaku wanted to go to Inter Milan. Then he decided, actually, I'm going to have a chat with Juventus. Inter Milan then pulled out completely because they are major, major rivals. But Juventus could only get a deal done if they sold a striker that was on their squad as it was. But they couldn't do that. So it looked like he might be in limbo for the rest of the window and indeed may have to stay or consider a move to Saudi. But what Chelsea did was change their stance a little bit because they wanted to do a permanent deal for Lukaku. But in the past few days, they changed that to accepting loan offers as well, and maybe loans with options. That, of course, would invite more suitors to the table, and it meant that Roma could do a deal which they wouldn't have been able to do before. And there is that link. Jose Mourinho is the manager at Roma. He signed him when he was Manchester United manager back in 2017. So the pair on the verge of being reunited.
There you go, Darren. He gave you a bit of rhyming. A limbo the rest of the window. Do Chelsea themselves then need to sign a striker?
I mean, they wouldn't say no, would they? Let's be honest. But I don't think they do. I think Nicholas Jackson will score goals this season. I certainly do. In the last game, he got off the mark, and Raheem Sterling looked a different player.
Exactly.
I think Pochettino's got him playing. Yes, absolutely. They've got Nkunku still to come back. I think he's like the second striker that he could play, but he could go up top as well. I personally don't think they need to sign a striker, but everyone wants to sign strikers. That's the way it is in football at the moment. But Lukaku leaving the football club does open up some wages, of course. So we could see something happen. But if it's me, I'm going to play Nicholas Jackson and give him an opportunity. OK,
Darmesh, doesn't think they need another striker. Are they likely to get one in, though?
They're in the market to bring one in, because we know they've been linked with a number of forwards, including the likes of Mohamed Kudus, who ended up going to West Ham United. We had the likes of Brennan Johnson, who looks like maybe Tottenham and Brentford are still interested in. There is a chance, though, because of the limited time left in the transfer window, that they won't sign a forward in this window and maybe revisit that area in January. They did sign David Washington from Santos, so they do have a striker on the books, but he's very young. And so I think the aim was to bring in a more experienced player and allow David Washington to go on loan to get regular first-team football throughout this season. But Washington staying and being part of the first-team squad for this season hasn't been ruled out. It will all depend on whether Chelsea can get something over the line in the next few days. If they can't, Washington, maybe you think, is likely to stay.
All right, let's talk Arsenal. Folarin Balogun, there is that name again. Is he finally on his way out?
Close. Very, very, very close now. He's been in Monaco over the weekend having a medical. The deal in question is worth £38 million. He will sign a contract for 5 years with the French club. From the outset of this transfer window, Balogun wanted a permanent move away from Arsenal. He didn't want to go on loan again. He's got 2 years left on his contract. He wants to go somewhere where he's under contract for a longer period of time and where he can set his roots and basically build a career at a new club. That is what he wanted to do. Ligue 1 is very agreeable with him, and I'm sure Monaco will have seen his performances last season. At Reims on loan, he played 34 times. Well, he started 34 times in the league, scored 21 goals, did Balogun. So I think Monaco have seen that and thought, this is someone that we can get the best out of if he comes to our club, and it's on the verge of happening.
What did you say, 38 million?
Yes.
£38 million for a player. I don't think he's played a Premier League game. I think he's played in the Europa League. Why is I don't understand why there's fuss about this player.
There's potential as well, and he's went on loan and he's done a fantastic job on loan, of course. I don't know what's happened with Arsenal and Balogun, to be honest, but he's not going to get an opportunity there. So it's best for everyone to get him out the door. I watched him a couple of years ago in the under-21s, and he was fantastic. He played Ipswich Town, and he was fantastic. And I thought, yeah, this kid's going to go to the very top, and just not quite worked out at Arsenal for whatever reason. And I even think Arsenal supporters are wondering why. But in Mikel we trust is what the Arsenal supporters like to say. So I'm sure they'll be doing that.
That said, do Arsenal still need to do some more business in the final 4 days?
Potentially, yes. We've seen last season a couple of injuries did hurt them in the defence and in Gabriel Jesus. Eddie Nketiah, is he going to take them to the very top? I think he's a fantastic player. He's got a good goal-scoring record, but maybe they do need to go into the market and try and sort that forward roll out, because if Jesus did get injured, can you rely on Nketiah the whole season? Probably not. Havertz, it's not really working again at the moment with him. I think he's talented. Just something's not clicking with Havertz at Chelsea and at Arsenal.
What do you think that is?
Well, it's confidence, I think, to a certain degree, and he should be a confident player now because, you know, Arsenal's come and paid a lot of money. Mikel Arteta clearly wants him as a player, but it's just not working for whatever reason. He has to stick with it. He has to keep going because he's going to continue to play because it's a lot of money. You can't have someone like that just be outcasted. He's talented and it could come good, but it just, for some reason, at Chelsea and Arsenal, not quite yet.
Hold that thought, Dharmesh. We've got to go to a break very quickly. Just over 4 days until the deadline. Next, we will discuss what we expect to happen in those 4 days, 3 hours. Is it 4 days, 3 hours, 10 minutes, and 35 seconds? And I will learn to tell the time by the time we've come back. See you in a moment. It's a transfer show, which means breaking transfer news. Dharmesh.
Yeah, a couple of bits to bring you. Nottingham Forest have agreed a deal with Corinthians for their defender, Murillo. The deal is worth around 16 million euros all in. We expect a medical to happen in the next 24 hours. And the story that we've been talking about today, Romelu Lukaku, it's my understanding now that a deal has been agreed in principle between Chelsea and Roma. It's a straight loan, and we think that is an £8 million loan fee involved that Roma will pay for the season for Romelu Lukaku. I haven't quite got the information yet with regard to the wages situation, but it looks like now Romelu Lukaku on his way from Chelsea to Roma on a straight loan deal, and the loan fee, we think, is around £8 million.
Right, OK, now we've got 4 days and a bit until the window closes. So I'm going to go through you all and want to know who you think will be the busiest and who you think should be. Dharmesh, you want to start?
Oh, sorry, start with Darren very quickly.
I'm sorry, Darmesh is now directing the show.
Okay,
Darren.
Okay, Darmesh, what do I think? You know what?
Sorry.
You know what? It could be any of them, Mike. We know that. We know what it's like in the last video. Who I want it to be, Tottenham. I think they need to get a few out the door. Maybe Jed Spence looking to leave. Højbjerg, there's links with him leaving. A couple more. And then Brennan Johnson, I'd love to see come in from now to the end of the season. Maybe one more. Not sure where, maybe a defender. I mean, I'd like Harry Maguire, but maybe a defender who needs to. Everton, they need to do a lot of work.
They do. Mark?
I think the busiest side will probably be Fulham, and I think Manchester United need to be the busiest.
OK. Darmesh?
Nottingham Forest will be up there being the busiest. Everton and Wolves probably need to do the most business. Is that enough?
You can give me a little bit more if you want.
It's up to you, Dams.
Yeah, you're in charge.
Short and sweet. You guys talk for too long
short,
anyway.
but
So.
Sweet, I don't know. That is the transfer show for today. We've got 4 hours. No, 4 days. Do you know what? I'm going to stop trying to tell the time. You know how long there is to go. Friday, 11 p.m. We're back with the transfer show tomorrow. That's for us. Sky Sports News next.